Al Capone, the future king of Chicago, started small. His journey from the gritty streets of Brooklyn to the underworld of Chicago is a tale of ambition, ruthlessness, and a relentless drive for power. He was born in Brooklyn, a tough neighborhood full of immigrants. Life was hard, money was scarce. The streets were filled with the sounds of different languages, the hustle of daily life, and the constant struggle to make ends meet. For many, the American dream seemed just out of reach. Capone dropped out of school young and joined a gang. Education took a back seat to survival. The gang offered him a sense of belonging, a way to navigate the harsh realities of his environment. He wanted a way out, a way to be somebody. The allure of power and respect was irresistible. He saw the gang as his ticket to a better life, a way to rise above the poverty and obscurity that surrounded him. He found a mentor in Johnny Torrio, a powerful gangster. Torrio was more than just a criminal. He was a strategist, a visionary who saw opportunities where others saw obstacles. Torrio taught him the ropes of crime. Under Torrio's guidance, Capone learned the intricacies of the underworld, from bootlegging to gambling, and the importance of alliances and loyalty. Capone was a quick learner. He absorbed everything Torrio taught him, honing his skills and sharpening his instincts. He was determined to make a name for himself. He was smart and ruthless. Capone knew that in the world of organized crime, only the strong survived. He was willing to do whatever it took to climb the ranks. He rose through the ranks, making a name for himself. His reputation grew, and with it, his influence. He was no longer just another street thug. He was becoming a force to be reckoned with. Then, opportunity came knocking, calling from the bustling city of Chicago. The city was ripe with potential, a place where a man with ambition could make his mark. Torrio saw potential in Chicago. The city was a hotbed of illegal activity, especially with Prohibition in full swing. It was a goldmine for those willing to take risks. Prohibition was in full swing, and the city was awash in illegal booze. Speakeasies and underground bars flourished, and the demand for alcohol was insatiable. Torrio brought Capone to Chicago to run his operations. It was a test, a chance for Capone to prove himself on a bigger stage. It was a chance for Capone to shine. He didn't disappoint. He seized the opportunity with both hands, determined to make Chicago his own. Capone's ambition and ruthlessness were unmatched. He quickly established himself as a dominant force in the city's underworld. He quickly made Chicago his own. Through a combination of strategic alliances, brutal enforcement, and shrewd business practices, he tightened his grip on the city. He built an empire on illegal liquor, gambling, and vice. His operations were vast and varied, encompassing everything from speakeasies to brothels. The streets ran red with the blood of his rivals. Capone was not afraid to use violence to eliminate competition and consolidate his power. Al Capone, the small-time gangster from Brooklyn, was now Scarface, the most feared man in Chicago. His rise to power was swift and brutal, and his name would go down in history as one of the most notorious criminals of all time. Capone was more than just a thug. He was a complex figure, a man who combined brute force with a keen business acumen. He was a shrewd businessman, always looking for the next big opportunity to expand his empire. When Prohibition came into effect, Capone saw it as a golden opportunity. He understood that where there was a demand, there was money to be made. He quickly built a vast network of breweries, distilleries, and speakeasies, ensuring that his supply met the insatiable demand for alcohol. To keep his operation running smoothly, Capone knew he had to have the right people in his pocket. He bribed cops and politicians, ensuring that the law turned a blind eye to his activities. Capone understood that violence was a tool, a means to an end. He didn't shy away from using it when necessary. He used violence strategically to eliminate competition and instill fear in those who dared to oppose him. His methods were ruthless but effective. Capone wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. He was personally involved in many of the violent acts that built his fearsome reputation. His ruthlessness became legendary. People knew that crossing Capone could mean a swift and brutal end, but Capone also understood the importance of public image. He knew that to maintain his power, he needed the support of the people. He presented himself as a man of the people, someone who cared about the community. He made sure to be seen interacting with ordinary citizens, shaking hands and listening to their concerns. Capone donated to charities and opened soup kitchens, providing food for the hungry during the Great Depression. These acts of generosity earned him a certain level of respect and admiration. He cultivated an image of a benevolent benefactor, a Robin Hood of the slums. This duality made him a complex and fascinating figure. But behind the facade was a cold, calculating criminal mastermind. Capone's public acts of kindness were a strategic move to secure his power and influence. He was always thinking several steps ahead, ensuring that his empire remained unchallenged. Capone's wealth and power allowed him to live a life of luxury, but it also made him a target. He was constantly under threat from rival gangs and law enforcement. Despite his efforts to maintain control, Capone's reign eventually came to an end. He was arrested and convicted of tax evasion, a charge that finally brought down the infamous Gangster. Capone spent the last years of his life in prison, a shadow of the powerful figure he once was. His story remains a testament to the rise and fall of one of history's most notorious criminals. Prohibition was the making of Al Capone. The ban on alcohol turned ordinary people into lawbreakers. Everyone wanted a drink. Capone was happy to supply it. His network of speakeasies thrived. They were glamorous and exciting, a stark contrast to the drab reality of Prohibition. Capone's bootlegging empire brought him immense wealth. He was making millions at a time when most Americans were struggling. He used his wealth to buy influence and protection. He had judges, politicians, and cops on his payroll. He was above the law, operating with impunity. His word was law in Chicago. Section 4. The Chicago Outfit, an empire of vice. This notorious criminal organization, led by the infamous Al Capone, was more than just a gang. It was a sprawling empire that thrived on the vices of the era. Capone's criminal organization, known as the Chicago Outfit, was a well-oiled machine. It operated with the precision of a legitimate business, but its profits were anything but legal. From the shadows, Capone orchestrated a network that extended its reach into every corner of Chicago. It wasn't just about booze. While Prohibition-era alcohol smuggling was a significant part of their operations, the Chicago Outfit diversified its criminal portfolio. Capone controlled gambling dens, brothels, and even labor unions. His influence was felt in the smoky backrooms of gambling parlors, the dimly lit corridors of brothels, and the heated negotiations of labor strikes. He had his fingers in every pie. From extortion to protection rackets, Capone's reach was vast. Businesses paid for his protection, and those who refused often found themselves at the mercy of his enforcers. His men were fiercely loyal. They were bound by a code of honor and fear, knowing that betrayal meant certain death. Loyalty was rewarded handsomely, but disloyalty was met with swift and brutal retribution. They were ready to kill and die for him. The streets of Chicago were often stained with the blood of those who dared to oppose the outfit. Violence was a tool of the trade, used to maintain order and instill fear. Capone rewarded loyalty, but demanded absolute obedience. His lieutenants knew that their power came directly from Capone, and they acted with his authority, enforcing his will with an iron hand. He ran his organization with an iron fist. Decisions were made swiftly and without question. Capone's word was law, and his orders were carried out with military precision. He was ruthless in dealing with traitors and rivals. Those who crossed him or threatened his empire were eliminated without hesitation. The message was clear: defy Capone and face the consequences. The streets of Chicago became a battleground. Gang wars erupted as rival factions vied for control. The sound of gunfire was a common occurrence, and the city was gripped by a constant state of tension. Gang wars raged as Capone fought to maintain control. Bodies piled up. The violence was relentless, and the death toll climbed as Capone's men clashed with rival gangs. The city lived in fear. Ordinary citizens were caught in the crossfire, and the newspapers were filled with headlines about the latest acts of violence. The fear was palpable, and the sense of danger was ever present. Capone was the puppet master, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. He controlled the city with a combination of fear, loyalty, and ruthless efficiency. His empire of vice was a testament to his cunning and brutality. Section 5. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre, a Bloody Valentine. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre was a turning point in Capone's reign. It was a brazen act of violence, even by Chicago standards. On February 14, 1929, 7 men associated with the North Side Gang, Capone's rivals, were lined up against a garage wall and gunned down in cold blood. The massacre shocked the nation. It was a public display of brutality that Capone couldn't hide from. Though he was never directly linked to the crime, everyone knew who was responsible. The public outcry was immense. The federal government, under pressure to act, made it their mission to bring Capone down. Section 6. Living like royalty, Capone's lavish lifestyle. Capone lived a life of extravagant luxury. He resided in a palatial estate with a bowling alley, a private zoo, and a personal barbershop. He wore custom-made suits, drove expensive cars, and dined on gourmet food. He loved the limelight and often courted the press. He wanted people to see him as a successful businessman, a man of the world. He gave generously to charities, further cultivating his Robin Hood image. But behind the charm and generosity was a cold-blooded killer. He was responsible for countless deaths. His wealth was built on blood and suffering. Section 7. The untouchable Capone evading justice. For years, Capone seemed untouchable. He had judges and politicians in his pocket. Witnesses were too scared to testify against him. He was always one step ahead of the law. He had a network of informants who kept him informed of any police activity. He had safe houses throughout the city where he could disappear at a moment's notice. He was a master manipulator, using his wealth and influence to stay out of jail. But his luck wouldn't last forever.